Most people think theft is a stranger breaking a window in the middle of the night. For me, it was my sister, Laurel, logging in from a device I thought she had forgotten years ago. I stared at my phone, waiting for the screen to glitch, but the balance remained zero. $7,500, every tip and overtime hour I had saved for my wedding, was gone. And with it, the quiet lie that my family actually loved me. The coffee grounds were stuck under my fingernails again. I scrubbed at them with the stiff bristles of the break room brush, watching the dark flecks swirl down the drain, but the smell of roasted beans and stale milk seemed to have worked its way into my pores. It was 10 at night. My feet throbbed in a rhythm that matched the hum of the refrigerator unit behind me. This was the end of a 12-hour day, split between my administrative shift at the dental office and the closing shift here at the daily grind. I dried my hands on a paper towel and pulled my phone from my back pocket. It had become a ritual. Every night, before I started the drive home to the small apartment I shared with a rescue cat named Barnaby. I opened my banking app. I tapped the screen. The little loading wheel spun for a second before the number appeared. $7,542. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. That number was not just digits. It was my freedom. It was the deposit for the Whispering Pines Lodge, a small, rustic venue 20 miles out of town that smelled like cedar and rain. It was the photographer who knew how to shoot in natural light. It was 3 nights in a coastal Airbnb for a honeymoon where my fiancé, Mark, and I could finally turn off our alarms. My mother called it the austerity wedding. She wanted a ballroom at the Briar Glen Country Club. She wanted a 5-course plated dinner and a string quartet. She wanted a performance. I just wanted a marriage. I locked the front door of the shop, jiggling the handle twice to be sure, and walked to my car. The night air was cool, signaling the end of autumn. In 2 weeks, I would transfer the final balance to the venue. In 2 months, I would be Hazel Ross Miller. I did not know then that the money was already compromised. I did not know that while I was steaming milk and wiping down counters, a door I thought I had locked years ago was standing wide open. My sister Laurel came over 2 days later. Laurel was the kind of person who seemed to exist in a permanent state of soft lighting. She was 2 years younger than me, but she acted like the older sister, the wiser soul, the one who navigated the world with a fluid grace while I stumbled over my own shoelaces. She sat at my kitchen table, nursing a glass of white wine, watching me address envelopes for the invitations. "You are working too hard. Hazel." Laurel tilted her head, her blonde hair falling perfectly over one shoulder. "You look exhausted. Mom is worried. You know, she thinks you are taking on too much because you are too stubborn to ask for help." I pressed a stamp onto a cream-colored envelope. "I am not stubborn." I said, "I just want to pay for this myself. Mark and I agree. We do not want strings attached to our wedding day." Laurel sighed, a sound that implied she loved me despite my foolishness. "Well, I am here to help," she said. "I am the organized one. Remember? I can handle the logistics. Have you confirmed the vendor transfer details? You know banks can be tricky with large amounts if you do not flag them first." I looked up. It was a mundane question. Helpful. Even, "I have not done the final transfer yet." I said, "I am waiting for the next pay cycle to clear so I have a buffer. But the account is ready." Laurel took a sip of wine, her eyes drifting to my phone sitting on the table between us. "You are still using that credit union downtown?" she asked. "The one with the app that looks like it was designed in 1999? "It works fine," I said. "Do you still use that old email for it? The one we made up when we started that dog-walking business in college?" I laughed. Pause and effect. "I haven't thought about that in years. Yeah, that is still the primary email linked to the account. I never got around to changing it. Why fix it if it is not broken?" Laurel smiled. She reached for the bottle and poured herself another splash. "You are funny. Hazel, you never change passwords. Do you? You are probably still using the name of your first goldfish followed by the year you graduated." I froze for a second, the stamp hovering over the paper. "No," I said, forcing a chuckle. "I updated it a few years ago." "Good," Laurel said, her voice smooth. Security matters, especially when you are hoarding all that cash for your dream day. She toasted me with her glass. I toasted back with my water bottle. I felt a surge of gratitude for her. My mother was critical, and my father was distant. But Laurel was here, sitting in my cramped kitchen, offering to help me plan. I did not see the calculation in her eyes. I only saw the reflection of a sister. The crash happened on a Tuesday. I was on my lunch break at the dental office, eating a yogurt at my desk while I finalized the list of songs for the reception. I had a reminder set in my calendar. Venue deposit due. Friday. I decided to check the account one more time. I wanted to see the money. I needed the dopamine hit of knowing everything was safe. I opened the app. Face ID recognized me. The screen loaded. $32. I stared at the screen. I blinked. Sure that the lighting in the room was playing tricks on me, I swiped down to refresh the page. The little circle spun, mocking me. $32.14. My stomach dropped so hard I felt physically sick. A wave of nausea rolling up my throat. I stood up, knocking my knee against the desk. No, I whispered. No. I tapped on the transaction history. My fingers were trembling so badly I missed the button twice. When the list finally populated, I saw them. 2 transfers, one for $4,000, one for $3,500. They were dated yesterday. They were labeled simply, Bill Pay, Extra Fau. The room seemed to tilt. The air conditioning vent above me was blowing cold air, but I was sweating. This was impossible. I had not authorized this. I had not bought anything. I dialed the bank's number, my fingers slipping on the keypad. I had to press the phone against my ear to hear over the sound of my own blood rushing in my head. Please hold, the automated voice said. Your call is important to us. I paced the small break room. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I thought about the venue. I thought about Mark's face when I told him. I thought about my mother saying, I told you that you couldn't handle this. Finally, a human voice. This is Marcus in fraud prevention. How can I help you? Someone stole my money. I said, my voice cracking. My wedding fund. $7,500. It is gone. There are transfers I did not make. Let me take a look. Ms. Ross, please verify your security question. I went through the motions, answering the questions like a robot. Mother's maiden name. Name of first pet. I see the transactions. Marcus said. 2 transfers initiated yesterday afternoon. I did not do that. I said, you have to stop them. You have to reverse them. I am looking at the access logs. Marcus said. His voice changed. It became less sympathetic, more clinical. Ms. Ross, these transfers were authenticated through a trusted device. What does that mean? I asked. It means the login came from a device that has been registered to your account for several years, and the 2-factor authentication code was sent to the email address on file. The code was entered correctly within 10 seconds. That is impossible. I said, I have my phone right here. I did not get a code. The code went to the email address starting with PAWS. Marcus said, the old email, the shared email. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. And the device? I asked. What device? It is listed as Laptop L. Ross, 2019. The world stopped. That was the MacBook I had given Laurel 3 years ago when I upgraded. I had wiped it. I was sure I had wiped it. But we had shared that laptop for a year before I gave it to her. Ms. Ross? Marcus asked. Are you still there? It was not a hack. It was not a stranger in a basement in a foreign country. It was Laurel. But it didn't make sense. Laurel had money. Laurel had a job in marketing. Laurel had a closet full of designer clothes and a car that cost more than my yearly salary. Laurel was the successful one. Why would she steal my wedding fund? It must be a mistake, I whispered. If the device is known and the credentials were used, the bank views this as an authorized transaction. Marcus said, you can file a dispute, but if you shared your password or device access, it becomes a civil matter, not fraud. We generally do not reimburse for family disputes. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I sat in the break room chair, staring at the wall, while the realization settled over me like wet concrete. Laurel knew about the email. Laurel had asked about the bank app. Laurel had made the joke about the passwords. She had been checking the lock to see if it was open. I drove to Laurel's apartment straight after work. I did not call Mark. I did not call my mother. I needed to look her in the eye. I needed her to tell me that Marcus at the bank was wrong, that the IP address was a glitch, that the world had not just cracked open. Laurel lived in a complex with a pool and a gym. Her apartment smelled like vanilla and expensive linen. When she opened the door, she was wearing yoga pants and a cashmere sweater. "Hazel," she said, smiling, "what are you doing here? We are seeing each other at dinner tonight, right?" I walked past her into the living room. It was perfectly curated. Throw pillows, art books, a life that looked effortless. "Where's the money?" "Laurel?" I asked. She closed the door slowly. "What money? What are you talking about?" "My wedding fund," I said. $7,500. It was transferred out of my account yesterday. The bank said it came from your old laptop, the one I gave you. They said the code went to our old email. Laurel's face went blank. Then, she let out a short, sharp laugh. "You are joking, right? You think I stole your money?" "I am not joking," I said. My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists at my sides. "The bank records show the login. You are the only other person who knows that email password. You are the only one with that computer." Laurel's expression shifted from amusement to offense. "I cannot believe this," she said. "I try to help you. I try to be supportive. And this is what you do? You come into my home and accuse me of being a thief? I saw the transfers." "Laurel," I shouted. "Lower your voice." She hissed. "My neighbors can hear you. Then tell me the truth. I do not know what happened to your money." "Hazel," Laurel shouted back. "Maybe the bank glitched. Maybe you got hacked because you used passwords from a decade ago like I told you. Maybe you spent it and you are too ashamed to admit it." I stared at her. The audacity took my breath away. "I spent it?" I asked. "On what?" "I don't know." Laurel threw her hands up. She looked frantic now, her eyes wide and wet. "You have been so stressed lately. You have been spiraling about this wedding, obsessing over every penny. Maybe you moved it and forgot. Maybe you are having some kind of episode, an episode." She was doing it. She was rewriting reality in real time. "Give it back," I said. "Please, Laurel. If you give it back right now, I will not tell anyone. We can fix this." Laurel started to cry. Meaningful. Heavy tears that rolled down her perfect cheeks. "Get out," she whispered. "Get out of my house. I cannot believe my own sister thinks I am a criminal." I stood there for a moment, waiting for her to break, waiting for the mask to slip. But it held. She believed her own performance. I turned and walked out. I had no proof. Just a device name and a gut full of lead. The family dinner was at my parents' house that night. It was a weekly obligation. Roast chicken, green beans, the silence of things unsaid. I had planned to skip it, but I knew if I did, Laurel would have the floor. She would set the narrative before I even arrived. So I went. I washed my face in the car, put on fresh concealer to hide the dark circles, and walked into the lion's den. Laurel was already there. She was sitting on the sofa next to my mother, holding a cup of tea. Her eyes were red-rimmed. As soon as I walked in, the conversation stopped. My mother looked at me. It was not a look of welcome. It was a look of concern. The kind of concern you give a toddler who is holding a sharp object. "Hazel," my mother said, "come sit down." I stayed by the door. "I am fine standing." I said, "Laurel told us what happened." My father said from his armchair. He looked uncomfortable. He hated conflict. "She told you she stole my money?" I asked. My mother sighed. A long, weary sound. "Hazel, honey, nobody stole anything. Laurel says you came to her apartment screaming. She says you were incoherent." "I was not screaming. I said I was asking why $7,000 is missing from my account and why the bank traced it to her computer." Laurel sniffed. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I told her it must be a mistake, Laurel said, her voice trembling. I told her I would help her call the bank, but she just kept yelling that I was a thief. She looked crazy. Mom, I have never seen her like that. I looked at my parents. I saw the doubt in their eyes. They looked at Laurel, successful, put together, crying softly. And then they looked at me, disheveled, exhausted from 2 jobs, desperate. We are worried about you. Hazel, my mother said, the wedding planning. It is a lot of pressure. Maybe you are taking on too much. Maybe you are confused about where the money went. I felt the blood drain from my face. They thought I was unstable. They thought I had hallucinated the theft, or committed it myself in a fugue state. She transferred it, I said, my voice low. I saw the logs. We can help you, my father said. We can look at the statements together. But you cannot go around accusing your sister. It is cruel. Cruel. Laurel looked up at me. For a split second, behind the tissue, I saw it. A tiny, tight smile. A flicker of triumph. She had won. She had taken my money. And now she was taking my credibility. If I screamed now, I proved her right. If I cried, I proved her right. If I flipped the table, I proved her right. I felt shame bloom in my chest. Hot and suffocating. Shame that I had been tricked. Shame that my family did not know me. Shame that I was losing. But then, the shame cooled. It hardened. It turned into something sharp and cold in my gut. I realized then that I could not win this with words. Arguments were Laurel's territory. She could twist words, tone, and memory until up was down. I could not fight her with emotion. I had to fight her with paper. I took a deep breath. I unclasped my hands. Okay, I said. My mother blinked. Okay? You are right, I said. My voice was steady, dead calm. I am stressed. I am tired. Maybe I misread the bank code. I will go home and look at it again. Laurel stopped crying. She looked at me, confused. She had expected an explosion. She had prepared for a fight. She did not know what to do with surrender. I think that is best, my mother said, relieved. Go home. Hazel, get some sleep. We can talk about the budget next week. I turned to leave. I am sorry. Laurel, I said. I lied, but it was the only way to get out of the room. Laurel nodded, wiping her dry eyes. It is okay, she said. I just want you to be okay. I walked out of the house. I got into my car. I did not cry. I did not scream. I put the car in gear and drove home in silence. That night, I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a fresh spreadsheet. I named it Project Reconstruction. I started a timeline. October 15th. Laurel asks about bank app. October 15th. Laurel jokes about passwords. November 2nd. Transfers initiated. $4,000 and $3,500. November 3rd. Bank confirms device laptop L. Ross. 2019. I logged into the old email account. Laurel was right. I had not changed the password in years. I went to the trash folder. Empty. I went to the permanently deleted folder recovery. There they were. 2 emails from the bank. Verification code. 49201. Verification code. 88391. They were time-stamped 2 minutes apart yesterday afternoon. She had logged in, got the codes, deleted the emails, and then emptied the trash. She thought she was thorough. She forgot that servers keep ghosts. I took screenshots. I saved them to an external hard drive. I printed them out. Then, I began the lockdown. I opened a new bank account at a completely different bank. I changed every password I owned, email, social media, utilities, to random strings of 20 characters that I wrote down in a physical notebook. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, linked solely to my phone number and an authenticator app, removing the email backup options. I did not tell Mark, not yet. If I told him, he would be furious. He would storm over to Laurel's. He would shout at my parents. He would defend me. And Laurel would use his anger to paint us both as unstable, aggressive, and jealous of her success. She would say he was controlling me. She would say we were trying to extort her. No, I needed more than anger. I needed a trap. I worked until 3 a.m. My eyes burned. My hands ached. At 3:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from the old bank app. Security alert. New payee. Added. I froze. I tapped the notification. The alert was dated from 2 days ago, but the system had just pushed it to my phone because of a sync delay. Payee name. C.V. Resort Holdings. Payee name. Lux Card Services. I stared at the screen. She hadn't just transferred the money to herself directly. She had used my account to pay her bills directly. She had set me up as the source of funds for her vacation and her credit card debt. But it was the timestamp that stopped my heart. The payees were added 3 weeks ago. She had added them, tested the link with a small, invisible penny transaction, and waited. She had waited to see if I noticed. She had waited for the account to hit the target amount. She didn't just take the money because she saw an opportunity yesterday. She had been watching my account grow for a month. She watched me save every tip. She watched me work overtime. She watched the number climb toward my wedding goal, and she waited until it was full enough to harvest. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a mistake. It was a harvest. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Laurel wanted to play the concerned sister. She wanted to be the hero who tolerated the crazy, ungrateful bride. I would let her. I would let her think she had gotten away with it. I would let her think I was broken and confused. I would let her build her story brick by brick. And when she was standing on top of it, waving to the crowd, I would pull the bottom brick out. I looked at the screenshot of the bank transfer one last time. $7,500. It was an expensive lesson, but Laurel was going to pay for it, with interest. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the bank, creating a glare that made my eyes ache. I adjusted my sunglasses and walked in. I had taken a sick day from the dental office, a lie that tasted like ash in my mouth. But I could not focus on appointment confirmations while my financial life was bleeding out. I sat in a cubicle across from a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She was not the voice on the phone. She was older, with steel gray hair cut into a sharp bob and a demeanor that suggested she had heard every variation of a sob story this city could produce. Her desk was uncluttered. No family photos, just a stapler, a computer monitor, and a box of tissues that looked accusingly full. Mrs. Higgins clasped her hands over the file I had brought. "Miss Ross," she said. Her voice was dry, like paper sliding over paper. "I have reviewed the preliminary report from the fraud center. I want to be very clear with you about where we stand." I nodded, gripping the strap of my purse. "The transfers were made using a device profile that has a history with your account." She continued. "The IP address resolves to a residential connection here in Briar Glen. The two-factor authentication was satisfied immediately to the bank's automated systems. This looks like you, or someone you trust, moving money to pay bills. It was not me." I said, "I told the man on the phone. It was my sister. She had the old laptop." Mrs. Higgins sighed. She took off her reading glasses. "We call this friendly fraud," she said. "It is a terrible term, but it is the industry standard. When a family member or a partner uses access that was arguably granted at some point, shared passwords, a device left logged in, a PIN written on a sticky note, the bank is in a difficult position. If we reimburse you, we are effectively accusing your sister of a felony. Then accuse her." I said, "Because she did it." Mrs. Higgins looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "If we pursue this as unauthorized fraud, we will require a police report that explicitly names the suspect. We will turn over the IP data to the authorities, and if the investigation reveals that you ever gave her permission to use that computer or that email, even years ago, the bank may deny the claim on the grounds of negligence. You left the door unlocked." "Ms. Ross," I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "So I am being punished for trusting my sister?" Mrs. Higgins leaned forward. "I am telling you that getting this money back through the bank is not a guarantee. It is a slow, ugly process. If she claims you authorized it, it becomes your word against hers, and banks do not like to be the judge in a family argument. I left the bank feeling smaller than when I walked in. The system was designed to stop hackers in Russia, not sisters in the suburbs. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot, watching people use the ATM. They looked so casual, withdrawing $20, depositing checks, routine, safe. I needed to know how she did it, not just the laptop. The timing was too precise. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my apps until I found Budget Buddy. It was a finance tracking app Laurel had convinced me to download 6 months ago. She had been on a kick about financial wellness and had insisted we both sign up so we could hold each other accountable. I had used it for a week, found it annoying, and forgotten about it. I opened the app. It asked for a fingerprint, then logged me in. I went to the settings menu, linked accounts. There was my main checking account, my savings, and the wedding fund. I tapped on login history. The list populated. Current session, iPhone 13, November 1st. Desktop, Chrome. October 28th. Mobile, L-Star Pro. October 15th. Mobile, L-Star Pro, L-Star Pro. That was Laurel's handle. She used it for everything. Her Instagram, her TikTok, her vanity license plate on her previous car. She hadn't just used the old laptop. She had been logging in from her phone for weeks, watching the balances. The app didn't allow transfers, but it allowed viewing. She used it as a window. She watched me deposit my paycheck. She watched me transfer the tips from the coffee shop. She watched the number hit 7,500. She knew exactly when the harvest was ready. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I could not scream. Screaming was what Laurel wanted. Screaming made me the hysterical sister. I needed to see if she would slip. I opened my text thread with her. My thumb hovered over the screen. I had to play the part. I had to be the Hazel she expected, the frazzled, slightly disorganized big sister who needed help. I typed, "Hey, I am trying to sort out the seating chart for the rehearsal dinner. My brain is fried. Can you maybe help me look at it later this week? I know you are good at the visual stuff." I sent it. The response came in 30 seconds. "Of course. I would love to. I am so happy to help you get organized. You have been so scattered lately. I was getting worried." Heart emoji, sparkle emoji. I stared at the screen, scattered. She was already planting the seeds in our direct messages. Later that afternoon, I saw the notification on Instagram. Laurel had posted a photo of herself. She was looking thoughtfully out a window, holding a mug of tea. The caption read, "Wedding season is so stressful for the whole family. Doing my best to support my sister right now as she navigates all the pressure. Remember to be kind to the brides in your life. Even when they are melting down, sister duty made. Honor patience." It had 40 likes in 10 minutes. Comments were rolling in. "You are such a good sister. Laurel, she is lucky to have you. Hang in there. Weddings make people crazy." She was building a fortress of public goodwill. If I accused her now, the entire internet would testify that she was the saint and I was the bridezilla. 2 days later, I met Laurel and a few of her friends for drinks. I didn't want to go. Every fiber of my being wanted to stay home with Barnaby and hide under a blanket. But staying home was suspicious. Staying home was depression. So I put on lipstick and went to the Velvet Rope, a trendy cocktail bar downtown where drinks cost $18 and tasted like perfume. Laurel was holding court in a booth. She looked radiant. She was wearing a new dress, something silk and emerald green that caught the low light. "Hazel," she called out, waving me over. "I ordered you a tonic water with lime. I figured you didn't need any alcohol right now." The implication hung in the air. Hazel is unstable. Alcohol is bad for unstable people. "Thanks," I said, sliding into the booth. Her friends, Jenna and Chloe, smiled at me with pity. Laurel had clearly briefed them. "So, how is the planning going?" Jenna asked, stirring her martini. "Laurel says you are rethinking the venue?" I kept my face neutral, not rethinking. I said, "Just finalizing payments. Laurel laughed. A light, tinkling sound. Oh, Hazel, you are always so worried about the money. I told you, if you need help with the budget spreadsheet, I can sit down with you. You get so overwhelmed by the numbers. I gripped my glass. The condensation was cold against my palm. Then I saw it. Sitting on the bench seat next to Laurel was a handbag. It was a structured leather tote, cream-colored with gold hardware. I recognized the logo. It was a designer brand that I had seen in magazines, the kind that cost $2,000. It looked brand new. The leather was stiff. The tag on the handle had been removed, but the little protective plastic sticker was still on the bottom stud. Cute bag, I said. Laurel's hand flew to the strap, instinctively pulling it closer. Oh, this? She smiled, but her eyes were tight. Yeah. I decided to treat myself. I got a bonus at work. A bonus. Laurel worked as a junior marketing associate for a local event planner. I knew for a fact they did not give out $2,000 bonuses in November. She turned to the waiter who was passing by. Another round of martinis for the table, she said brightly. On me. I am celebrating. Celebrating what? Chloe asked. Just life, Laurel beamed, and being able to help out my friends. She handed the waiter a credit card. It was a heavy metal card. I watched her laugh, throwing her head back. She was buying drinks for her friends. She was wearing a bag that cost more than my car insurance for the year. She was glowing. She was wearing my wedding. My venue deposit was sitting on the seat next to her. My photographer fee was being poured into martini glasses. My honeymoon was being digested by strangers. I felt bile rise in my throat. I stood up abruptly. I have to go. I said, Hazel? Laurel looked up, her expression shifting instantly to concern. Are you okay? Do you need air? I am fine, I said. I just remembered I have to feed the cat. Laurel turned to her friends. See? She whispered, loud enough for me to hear. She is so flighty lately. I walked out of the bar. I made it to the alleyway before I dry-heaved next to a dumpster. It wasn't just theft. It was consumption. She was eating my life to feed her image. When I got home, Mark was sitting at the kitchen table. He was looking at a spreadsheet of guest addresses. He looked up, his face lighting up when he saw me, then falling when he saw my expression. Hazel? What happened? I sat down across from him. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to bury my face in his chest and let him fix it. Mark was a carpenter. He fixed things. He built things. He made the world solid. But if I told him Laurel stole the money, he would go to war. And war was what Laurel wanted. She would play the victim. She would say Mark was aggressive. She would make the family choose. I checked the account. I said, there was a problem with the transfer. Mark frowned. What kind of problem? I am handling it. I said, but the money, it is not there right now. Mark put down his pen. Hazel, talk to me. Is it fraud? Did we get hacked? It is complicated. I said, I am talking to the bank. I have some savings. Mark said immediately. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palms were rough and warm. I have about $8,000 in the truck fund. We can use that. We can pay the venue tomorrow. I looked at his earnest face. He had been saving that money for 3 years to buy a new work truck. His current one had 200,000 miles on it and rattled when it went over 40. No, I said, Hazel, it is fine. The truck can wait. No. Mark, I squeezed his hand. I am not taking your truck money. It is our wedding, he said. I know, but I need to fix this. Please, just give me a little time. He looked at me for a long moment. He saw the tension in my jaw. He saw the shadow in my eyes. Is this about Laurel? He asked quietly. I froze. Why would you say that? Because you get this look when she is involved, like you're trying to hold up a wall that is falling down. I pulled my hand away gently. I just need to handle it. Mark, please, if you pay for it, then I didn't do it. He didn't understand. He couldn't. It wasn't just about the money. It was about agency. If Mark paid, I was the victim who got rescued. I was the poor, Scattered Hazel who couldn't protect her own savings. Laurel would look at me with that pitying smile and say, "Thank goodness Mark stepped in. I refused to be the charity case in my own life." "Okay," Mark said slowly. "I will give you time, but Hazel, you are not alone in this." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "I know." The next day, I focused on the smaller details, the florist, the favors, the things that didn't cost thousands of dollars. I remembered that Laurel had given me a gift a few months ago. She claimed she had a connection with Petals Vines, the best florist in town. She said she had secured a $500 credit for me as a referral bonus because she had promoted them heavily on her social media. I called the shop. "Hi, this is Hazel Ross." I said, "I wanted to check on a credit attached to my account." It was a referral from Laurel Ross. There was a long pause. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. "Ms. Ross," the woman said. Her voice was cool. "Yes, we have a note here about your sister." "Great," I said. "Is the credit active?" "No," the woman said. "Actually, we had to ask your sister to stop contacting us." My stomach dropped. "I am sorry?" "She emailed us repeatedly asking for free services in exchange for exposure," the woman said. "She claimed she was a major local influencer. When we declined, she sent a bill for $500, claiming she had already done marketing work for us and demanded we credit it to your wedding. We told her we do not do business that way." I closed my eyes. "I see." I said, "I am so sorry." "She told you it was a gift?" the woman asked, her voice softening slightly. "Yes, there is no credit. Ms. Ross, I am afraid your sister. Well, she was very aggressive. We almost blocked her number." I hung up. There was no gift. There never was. It was all smoke. Laurel didn't have connections. She had audacity. She tried to bully a small business into giving her free things, failed, and then presented the failure to me as a generous gift that just needed to be activated. If I had walked into that florist expecting a credit, I would have been humiliated. Laurel would have shrugged and said, "Oh, they must have messed up the paperwork." She didn't care if I was embarrassed. She only cared that for 5 minutes. When she told me about the credit, she looked like a powerful, connected benefactor. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. I began to see the shape of it, the architecture of her mind. Laurel didn't steal because she was hungry. She didn't steal because she was behind on rent, though I suspected she was. She stole because she could not tolerate being ordinary. She needed to be the girl with the new handbag, the girl who bought the round of drinks, the girl who gave the lavish gift, the girl who saved the day. And to be that girl, she needed a resource. I was the resource. Growing up, it was my clothes, then my homework, now, my life savings. She was a vampire, but instead of blood, she drank stability. I needed legal advice, but I couldn't afford a lawyer. I went to the free legal aid clinic at the community center on my lunch break. I told the receptionist I was there for tenant issues, so no one would ask questions. I sat down with a volunteer paralegal named David. He was young, earnest, and overworked, hypothetically. I said, "If a family member uses a password they were given years ago to transfer money out of an account, is it theft?" David rubbed his eyes. "It is theft," he said, "but proving it is a nightmare. Why? Because access implies consent," he said. "Defense attorneys love these cases. They argue it was a loan. They argue it was a joint fund. They argue that because you gave them the password in 2018, you never explicitly revoked it. Unless you have a written agreement saying, 'Do not touch this money,' it is a gray area. What about small claims court? The limit in this state is $5,000. David said, "If the amount is higher, you have to go to civil court. That requires a lawyer. That costs money. What if I have proof they logged in from their device?" "Good," David said, "but not enough. They can say you asked them to log in for you." Hazel is bad with computers. She asked me to move the money for her. It happens all the time. I stared at the scuffed linoleum floor. "So how do you win?" I asked. David looked at me. "You need them to admit it," he said. Or you need to prove they had a motive that contradicts their story. You need to catch them in a lie that cannot be explained by, "I was helping." A motive. I thanked him and left. 2 days passed. The silence between Laurel and me was heavy. I kept up the charade of texting her about flowers and colors. She kept up the charade of sending supportive emojis. Then, the new lie started. My cousin Sarah called me. "Hazel," she said, "I heard about the money trouble." I stiffened. "What did you hear?" "Laurel told Aunt Linda that you guys moved the wedding fund to her account for safekeeping." Sarah said, "Because you were worried you would spend it on other things." "Other things?" "Yeah." Sarah lowered her voice. "She implied you were having some trouble. Maybe gambling or debt. She said you asked her to hold the money so you wouldn't blow it, and now you are panicking and asking for it back. But she is trying to be responsible and stick to the plan you made." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was brilliant, truly brilliant. She wasn't denying she had the money anymore. She knew the bank trail was too clear. So she pivoted. "Yes, I have the money. But Hazel gave it to me. It explained the transfer. It explained the device access. It explained everything. It painted her as the responsible guardian and me as the addict, the spendthrift, the child who needed an allowance. If I sued her now, she would walk into court and say, "Your Honor, I was holding these funds in trust at her request." I hung up with Sarah, my hands shaking. She had blocked my exit. I was sitting at my computer, staring at the screen, feeling the walls close in. I had the timeline. I had the bank logs. But it wasn't enough. Her story was plausible to anyone who didn't know the truth. Then, my email pinged. It was a notification from the Ross family Google group. We used it for reunion planning and holiday lists. Subject: FWD. Urgent. Payment extension request. Reference: 88391. I frowned. That wasn't a family email. I opened it. It was an email from Laurel. She had meant to forward it to herself. Her personal email started with L, just like the family list address. She had auto-completed the wrong address and hit send. I read the text. To Card Member Services, from Laurel Ross. Date, November 1st. Subject, Payment Plan. Please, I am asking for one more week. I have a large transfer coming in from a family trust distribution on November 3rd. It will cover the entire past due balance of $7,200. Please do not send this to collections. I have the funds secured. They are just clearing. November 1st, 2 days before the theft. Family trust distribution. There was no family trust. She had promised the credit card company $7,200. My wedding fund was $7,500. She didn't take it to hold it for me. She didn't take it to protect me. She had spent it before she even touched it. She had promised my money to a creditor to save her own skin. And she had timed the theft exactly to meet their deadline. I stared at the screen. The lie about holding the money for Hazel fell apart right here. You don't pay your own credit card debt with money you are holding in trust for someone else. If she used my money to pay her debt, that was conversion. That was theft. And this email proved premeditation. I hit print. Then I hit save as PDF. Then I forwarded it to my secret email account. I looked at the date on the email again. November 1st. She had planned the theft. She had promised the money, and then she had come to my house, drank my wine, and smiled at me. Knowing she was about to pull the trigger, I felt a cold calm settle over me. She had made a mistake, a small, digital slip of the finger. She thought she was smarter than everyone. She thought she could control the narrative, but she just handed me the weapon I needed. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Laurel. I didn't call my mother. I called the police non-emergency line. "This is Hazel Ross," I said. "I would like to file a report regarding a theft." The precinct smelled like stale coffee and industrial floor cleaner. It was a smell that stuck to the back of my throat, chemical and sharp. I sat on a hard plastic chair, my hands folded in my lap, watching a police officer type slowly on a keyboard that looked like it had survived a decade of abuse. Officer Miller was a heavy-set man with kind eyes but a weary posture. He had listened to me explain the situation without interrupting. nodding occasionally as he took notes. So, let me get this straight. Ms. Ross, he said, pausing his typing, you are reporting unauthorized access to your bank account. You have the IP addresses and the device names, but you do not want to name a suspect at this time? I took a breath. This was the needle I had to thread. If I named Laurel right now, before I had the full picture locked down, she would spin it as a family squabble. She would cry. She would say I was hysterical. The police would label it civil and walk away. I need the report to document the theft. I said carefully, I need to establish that the access was not authorized by me. The bank requires a police report number to proceed with their internal investigation. I am providing the technical evidence, the device logs, the email recovery timestamps. I want the investigation to follow that evidence. Officer Miller looked at me over his reading glasses. Ms. Ross, he said, his voice lowering slightly. Usually, when people come in with this kind of specific info, device names, old emails, they know exactly who did it. It is usually an ex-boyfriend, a roommate, or a sibling. I stayed silent. I looked at the scuff marks on the linoleum floor. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. Look, I can file this. I can put in the report that you claim unknown, unauthorized access. But I have to warn you. If we subpoena the ISP records and they point to a family member, and it turns out you gave them a password 5 years ago, the district attorney is not going to touch it. Family cases turn messy. They turn into he said, she said situations, and the courts hate them. I understand. I said, I just want the facts recorded. $7,500 was removed without my permission. That is a crime, regardless of who shares my last name. He studied me for a long moment, looking for the crack in my composure. When he didn't find one, he turned back to his screen. All right, he said, I will give you a case number, but do not expect a SWAT team. These financial crimes take months to process. I took the slip of paper he handed me. It felt flimsy, but it was the first brick in the wall I was building. My mother ambushed me 2 days later. I was at my apartment, sorting laundry. When I heard the knock, it was the specific, rhythmic rap that only my mother used. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. It was a knock that demanded entry. When I opened the door, she breezed past me without waiting for an invitation. She was wearing her serious conversation coat, a structured beige trench that she usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences or complaining to managers. We need to talk. Hazel, she said, turning to face me in the middle of my small living room. I closed the door. Barnaby the cat scurried under the sofa. Sensing the drop in atmospheric pressure. Hello to you too. Mom, I said. Laurel called me this morning. My mother said. She was crying. Hazel, she is beside herself. I picked up a laundry basket, using it as a shield. Is she? I asked. Don't use that tone, my mother snapped. She says you are ghosting her. She says she has been trying to help you with the wedding, trying to be a good sister, and you are treating her like a pariah. She thinks you are having a breakdown. I felt the familiar flare of anger, hot and sharp, but I tamped it down. Anger was fuel for Laurel's fire. Silence was water. I am not having a breakdown. I said calmly, I am just busy. I am picking up extra shifts. Because of the money? My mother asked. Her eyes narrowed. Laurel told us about the money trouble. She said you blew through your savings and now you are panicking. Hazel, if you are in debt, if you have a problem, gambling, or shopping, you can tell us. I stared at her. My own mother. She looked at me not with trust, but with a fearful suspicion that had been planted there, seed by seed, by my sister. I did not blow through my savings. Mom, I said, my voice was level. I did not spend $7,500 on shoes or blackjack. The money was stolen. Stolen? My mother threw her hands up. By who? Hackers? Laurel said the bank told you it was a recognized device. That means you spent it and forgot. Or you are lying. Why can't you just admit you made a mistake? We can fix a mistake. We cannot fix this delusion. She gestured at me, as if This was a stain on her carpet. I am handling it through the proper channels. I said, "What does that mean?" "It means I filed a police report." I said, "And I am working with the bank's fraud department. If I made a mistake, the investigation will show that. If someone else took it, the investigation will show that too." My mother froze. The color drained from her face. "You called the police?" she whispered. "On your sister?" "I didn't say that. I said I reported a theft. Hazel, you have to stop this." My mother stepped forward, clutching my arm. Her grip was tight. Desperate. "You cannot bring the police into this family. Think about your father. Think about Laurel's job. If you drag her name through the mud because you are stressed out about a wedding—" I looked down at her hand on my arm. "If Laurel didn't take it, Mom, she has nothing to worry about. The police only catch thieves." My mother pulled her hand back as if I had burned her. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "You have changed, Hazel," she said. "You used to be the kind one." I didn't answer. I just opened the door. "I am still kind, Mom," I said. "I am just not a doormat anymore. Goodbye." She left, shaking her head, muttering about how I was ruining everything. I locked the door and leaned against it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It hurt. It hurt so much to see her choose the lie because the lie was prettier than the truth. But I didn't cry. I didn't have time to cry. The next meeting was with the bank's escalated fraud unit. I had insisted on an in-person review of the transaction logs. I sat across from a man named Mr. Henderson. He was younger than Mrs. Higgins, with sharp glasses and an air of technical precision. "I have the expanded logs you requested, Ms. Ross," he said, turning his monitor so I could see. I squinted at the lines of data. It looked like a foreign language. But Mr. Henderson pointed to a cluster of entries. "This is what I found interesting," he said. "Look at the timestamps." I looked. November 2nd, 10:15. A.M. Transfer scheduled. $7,500. Status: canceled by user. November 2nd, 10:18 a.m. Transfer scheduled. $8,000. Status: failed. Insufficient funds. November 2nd, 10:20 a.m. Transfer scheduled. $4,000. Status: approved. November 2nd, 10:22 a.m. Transfer scheduled. $3,500. Status: approved. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. They were testing the limits. "Mr. Henderson said, "They tried to take the whole amount. Then they tried to take more than what was there. Likely to see exactly what the ceiling was. When the big lump sum felt too risky or hit a limit, they broke it down into two smaller chunks to avoid triggering the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. It wasn't a desperate grab. It was a calculated extraction. Whoever did this knew how banking algorithms work." "Mr. Henderson said, "or they were very, very cautious." I nodded slowly. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me since the first call. "The email." I said, "The one the verification codes went to. Can we see the recovery settings for that email account? I know it is not your system, but it is linked to the bank profile." Mr. Henderson clicked a few keys. "I can see the contact info we have on file for the security validation of that email address." He said, "It looks like there was a backup phone number listed for account recovery." He read the number out loud, 555-0199. I closed my eyes. That was Laurel's cell phone number. Her old number. From 3 years ago, before she switched carriers to get a new iPhone deal. She hadn't hacked the email. She hadn't broken in. Years ago, when we shared the laptop, when we were close, when we were sisters, I must have put her number down as the backup, in case I get locked out. I probably said, in case of emergency. I had given her the key. I had put it in her hand and smiled. "Ms. Ross?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Do you recognize that number?" I opened my eyes. "Yes," I said. "It is an old number. I didn't tell him whose." I just stared at the screen, realizing that the crime wasn't just the theft of money, it was the weaponization of trust. She had walked through a door I left unlocked because I loved her. and she had stripped the house bare. I needed to see her face. I needed to see if there was any guilt, any hesitation. I needed to know if my sister was still in there somewhere, buried under the layers of envy and entitlement. I texted her, "Can we talk? Coffee? I am feeling really down about the wedding." She replied instantly, "Of course, babe, meet me at Beanleaf in an hour. I am here for you." Beanleaf was crowded. The air smelled of roasted sugar. Laurel was already at a table, waving at me. She had a latte in front of her and a concerned expression painted on her face. "Hazel," she said as I sat down, "you look terrible. Have you been sleeping?" "Not really," I said. I let my shoulders slump. I let my voice crack. I didn't have to act much. The exhaustion was real. "Mom said you are really stressed," Laurel said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Her skin was soft. Her manicure was perfect. I said. I stared at my black coffee. "Laurel, I don't think I can do it." "Do what?" "The wedding," I said. "The money is gone. The bank is dragging its feet. Mark and I are fighting about finances. I don't think we can afford the venue anymore." I watched her eyes. I expected surprise. I expected her to offer solutions. Instead, for a fraction of a second, I saw it, a flash of light, a relaxation of the muscles around her mouth. It was relief. If I canceled the wedding, the pressure was off. If I canceled, she didn't have to pay it back. If I canceled, the bank error became permanent history. But then, the mask slid back into place. "Oh, Hazel," she cooed. "That is heartbreaking, but maybe it is for the best." "For the best?" I asked. "I mean, if you guys are fighting this much, and if you are this unstable, maybe a big wedding isn't the right move. You could just go to the courthouse. It would be so much cheaper. And honestly, less embarrassing than having a wedding you cannot pay for." Embarrassing. She was managing me. She was guiding me toward a small, quiet defeat so she could keep her victory. "I cannot believe this is happening," I whispered. "I worked so hard for that money." "I know," Laurel said. She took a sip of her latte. "But money comes and goes. Hazel, you have to prioritize your mental health. Mom and I are just worried that you are spiraling." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Honestly, Hazel, everyone is talking about it. People are worried you are going to have a breakdown at the altar." Canceling might save face. She wasn't just stealing the money. She was trying to cancel my joy. She wanted me small. She wanted me in the courthouse, in the shadows. While she stood in the light, I looked at her. I really looked at her. And I realized I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She was a hollow thing, filling herself up with scraps of my life because she had none of her own. "You might be right," I said. "I will talk to Mark." Laurel smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. "Good," she said. "I am proud of you. Hazel, it takes courage to admit you can't handle things." The next day, the rumors started coming back to me. I met my friend Sarah for lunch. Sarah was a bridesmaid, loyal to a fault, and bad at lying. "Hazel," she said, picking at her salad, "I have to tell you something." "What?" "I ran into Chloe yesterday." "Laurel's friend?" I nodded. "She told me that you called off the wedding," Sarah said. "She said Laurel told them you were having a mental health crisis and that you had gambled away the wedding fund. She said the family is staging an intervention." I set my fork down. "Gambled." I repeated, "Yeah." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "She said you have a problem with online slots, and that Laurel tried to stop you, but you stole the money back from her and lost it." I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. Online slots. That was a new one. "She is good," I said. "She is really good." "Hazel, is it true?" Sarah asked gently. "No. Sarah, it is not true. But the story was out there. Laurel was salting the earth. She was destroying my credibility so that if I ever came forward with the truth, that she was the thief, everyone would say, 'Oh, poor Hazel. She is making up stories to cover her addiction.' I realized then that I couldn't just get the money back. If I just got the money back, The stain would remain. I would still be the unstable sister who almost ruined her own wedding. I had to clear my name, and the only way to do that was to make Laurel tell the truth. I needed to understand the why, not the psychological why. I knew that. I needed the financial why. I called Sam. Sam was an accountant I had dated briefly in college. We had stayed friends. He was forensic in his thinking and discreet. I met him at his office after hours. I brought the printed email, the one Laurel had accidentally forwarded about the credit card extension. Sam, I said, hypothetically, if someone owes $7,200 to a credit card company and they claim they have a trust distribution coming, what does that mean? Sam looked at the email. He adjusted his glasses. It means they are desperate, he said. Card companies don't usually grant extensions on that kind of balance unless you promise a lump sum. This person was on the brink of charge-off. I showed him the dates. The extension request was November 1st. The theft from my account was November 2nd. Sam whistled. That is tight, he said. I pulled out my phone. I did some digging. I said, I looked up the public court records for civil judgments. I slid the phone across the desk. It was a screenshot from the county clerk's website. Laurel Ross versus Briar Glen Apartments, eviction filing, October 10th. She was being evicted? Sam asked. She settled it on November 4th. I said, 2 days after the money left my account. Sam did the math on a notepad. 7,500 stolen, 7,200 owed to the credit card. That leaves 300. Not enough for rent. She didn't pay the credit card. I said, I think she paid the rent to stop the eviction. And she probably paid the minimum on the card to keep them quiet. She used my wedding to keep a roof over her head and a designer bag on her arm. It fits, Sam said. It is circumstantial. Hazel, but it fits. She was drowning. You were the life raft. I went home that night feeling heavy. I knew the truth now. Laurel wasn't just jealous. She was broke. She was living a lie that cost thousands of dollars a month to maintain, and she had run out of road. I checked my email. There was a message from a woman named Joyce at the Briar Glen Community Foundation. Dear Hazel, your sister, Laurel Ross, has applied for the position of Donor Relations Manager with our organization. She listed you as a personal reference. We are conducting final background checks and would love to speak with you briefly about her character and reliability. I stared at the screen. Donor Relations Manager. The Community Foundation managed millions of dollars in charitable giving. They handled scholarships, grants, and endowments. It was a job that required absolute financial integrity. Laurel wanted access to the big leagues. Hey, I said. My voice was dull, defeated. Hazel? Laurel answered on the first ring. Are you okay? I talked to Mark. I said, we are thinking about just doing the courthouse thing. Like you said. Oh, Hazel. Laurel's voice soared. I really think that is for the best. It will be so much less pressure. But, I said, adding a tremor to my voice. The bank called. Silence. What did they say? Laurel asked sharply. They said the investigation is getting complicated. I said, they said because it looks like a family member might be involved. They need a sworn statement. A sworn statement? Yeah. I paused. They said if I sign a statement saying I authorized you to move the money, just temporarily, then they can close the fraud case. They won't prosecute anyone. They will just treat it as a loan dispute. I let the lie hang in the air. It was the bait. And? Laurel asked. Her voice was tight. I don't know. Laurel, I sighed. If I sign that, I can never get the money back from the bank. I lose everything. But you save the family, Laurel said quickly. Hazel, think about Mom and Dad. You don't want police coming to the house. You don't want a scandal. If you sign that paper, it all goes away. She was desperate. She needed the investigation to stop before the police subpoenaed her records. I guess. I said, but I would need to see the statement first. I need to know what I'm signing. I can write it, Laurel said. I can draft it for you. I will make it sound really professional. We can say you asked me to manage the funds because you were overwhelmed. She was volunteering to write her own confession. Okay, I said. Send me a draft. If it looks okay, maybe I will sign it. You are doing the right thing. Hazel, Laurel said, you are finally being sensible. I hung up. My hands were not shaking anymore. She was going to put it in writing. She was going to type out a document that said, I, Laurel Ross, took possession of the funds. She would frame it as permission, but she would admit to the act. And once I had that document, and the police report, and the bank logs, I would have her. I walked over to the window, outside. The leaves were falling from the trees, stripping the branches bare. Winter was coming. Laurel wanted to be the hero. She wanted to be the savior who stepped in to manage her unstable sister's finances. I would let her play the hero. I would let her stand on the stage and recite her lines. And then I would turn on the house lights. The Sunday brunch was Laurel's idea. She called it a bride support circle, a title that made my teeth ache. It was held at the garden table, a bistro with exposed brick walls and overpriced avocado toast, the kind of place where the noise level hovered somewhere between a cocktail party and a jet engine. I arrived 10 minutes late, a calculated move. I wanted them to be settled. I wanted the narrative to be already flowing so I could step into it and test the current. Laurel was at the head of the table, flanked by her friends Jenna and Chloe, and two of my cousins, Sarah and Beth. There was an empty chair for me, right next to Laurel, as if I were the guest of honor at my own funeral. Hazel! Laurel exclaimed, standing up to hug me. She smelled of expensive perfume and white wine. We were just talking about you. I ordered you a mimosa, but I told them to go light on the champagne. I know you're trying to keep a clear head. I sat down. The table was littered with small plates and half-empty glasses. Thanks, I said, keeping my voice small. I appreciate it. So, Hazel, Jenna said, leaning forward. Laurel was telling us you decided to downsize the wedding? That is so brave. Honestly, big weddings are such a scam anyway. Laurel put a hand on my shoulder, a heavy, possessive weight. I told them that you are just prioritizing, Laurel said. I told them that after the confusion with the budget, you realized that maybe a huge party wasn't the healthiest thing right now. The confusion with the budget, that was the phrase of the day, not the theft, not the missing $7,500, just a vague, cloudy confusion that placed the fault nowhere and everywhere at once. I took a sip of the watered-down mimosa. It has been hard, I said. Watching Laurel out of the corner of my eye, I just felt like I lost control of things. Laurel nodded vigorously, looking at the others. See? She is so self-aware. That is what I love about her. When Hazel realized she was overextended, she came to me, and we sat down and looked at the reality of it. It takes a lot of maturity to admit you can't afford the dream anymore. I reached into my purse and touched the record button on my phone, which was resting just inside the open pocket. When was that? Laurel? I asked gently. When we sat down? Laurel blinked. She hadn't expected a specific question. Oh, you know, she said, waving a hand airily. A few weeks ago, right before the transfer happened, when you asked me to help you safeguard the funds? Safeguard. I smiled. A tight, thin smile that felt like paper cuts on my lips. Right, I said. I remember now. I let her talk for the next hour. I let her tell stories about how I used to lose my lunch money in elementary school. I let her paint a picture of me as the beloved but incompetent older sister. The one who needed Laurel's steady hand to navigate adulthood. Every time she spoke, I noted the inconsistencies. She claimed I asked her to hold the money on October 15th. My bank logs showed she accessed the account to check the balance on October 1st. She claimed I transferred the money to her. The bank logs showed a pull transaction initiated from her device, not a push transaction from mine. She claimed she was keeping it in a high-yield savings account for me, but I knew about the credit card debt. I knew about the eviction notice. I collected her lies like distinct, poisonous berries. By the time the check came, and Laurel made a show of paying for my meal with a card that I suspected was maxed out. I had enough audio to contradict her sworn testimony 3 times over. Monday morning. I made the call I had been dreading. I sat in my car during my lunch break. The windows rolled up against the chill. I dialed the main number for the Briar Glen Community Foundation. Human Resources. Please, I said. A woman answered. Her voice was crisp, professional. The voice of a gatekeeper. This is HR. How can I help you? Hi, I said. I am calling with a general inquiry regarding your hiring policies. I am a potential applicant for a financial role, and I wanted to understand the background check process. Go ahead, she said. If an applicant is found to have discrepancies in their financial history, specifically regarding the mismanagement of funds or misrepresentation of debts, is that an automatic disqualification? There was a pause. For a role involving donor funds? Absolutely. We have a fiduciary duty to our board. Any applicant with a record of financial impropriety, or who is found to have falsified their application details regarding their financial standing, would be immediately removed from consideration. We also share that data with our partner organizations in the nonprofit sector to prevent cross-hiring risks. And if they lied about the source of funds in their personal accounts? I asked. The woman's voice grew sharper. Ma'am, honesty is the baseline. If we find an integrity violation, the process stops. Thank you, I said. That is very helpful. I hung up. Laurel wasn't just risking a job. She was risking her entire career in Briar Glen. If I exposed her, she wouldn't just be unemployed, she would be blacklisted. The weight of that power sat heavy in my lap. I wasn't just fighting for my wedding anymore. I was holding the detonator to her life. I went to the police station straight after work. Officer Miller was at his desk, eating a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. He wiped his mouth when he saw me. Ms. Ross, he said, back so soon? I have more, I said. I placed a manila folder on his desk. Inside were the screenshots of the email recovery settings showing Laurel's phone number, the timeline of the test transfers, and the printout of the accidental email regarding her credit card debt. Officer Miller put his sandwich down. He opened the folder and flipped through the pages. He stopped at the email about the credit card extension. This is dated the day before the money moved, he said. Yes, and she claims she had a trust distribution coming. We don't have a trust. I said, we have a blue-collar dad and a mom who works part-time at a library. The only large sum of money moving in our family that week was my wedding fund. Officer Miller leaned back. He rubbed his chin. This changes things, he said. This establishes motive. It is not just, I borrowed it. It is, I needed it to stop a collapse. He tapped the paper with a thick finger. I can subpoena the bank records now, he said. With this, I can get a warrant to see exactly where that money went after it hit the target account. If it went straight to card member services and the landlord, the safekeeping defense falls apart. How long, I asked. A few weeks, he said. Banks are slow, but Ms. Ross, if we do this, it becomes a criminal fraud case. The DA will pick it up. Your sister could be looking at felony charges, grand larceny. I looked at the badge on his chest. I gave her a chance to return it. I said, she told me I was crazy. She told my family I was a gambler. She made her choice? Officer Miller nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I will file the request. As I was leaving, I remembered the other thing, the detail that had been gnawing at me. One more thing, I said, I found something else on my credit report. A soft inquiry from a utility company for an address I don't live at. The officer frowned. Identity theft? Sort of. I said, the name on the inquiry wasn't Hazel Ross. It was Hazel L. Ross. Laurel's middle name was Anne. Mine was Marie. She used the L for Laurel. I said, but she used my first name. She created a hybrid, enough to pass a credit check using my score, but with a name she could claim was just a typo if she got caught. Oh, I meant to write Laurel. I just got confused. Blur and hide. Miller said, it is a common tactic. Muddy the waters so nobody can see the bottom. It is not just theft, I said. It is erasure. She is rewriting me to service her debts. I couldn't keep it from Mark anymore. The silence in our apartment was too loud. He knew something was wrong. He saw the late nights, the secret phone calls, the way I flinched when my phone buzzed. I sat him down at the kitchen table on Tuesday night. I put the folder between us. "Mark," I said, "I need to tell you the truth, but before I do, I need you to promise me something." Mark looked at the folder, then at me. His face was drawn. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. "What is it?" "Hazel? Did we lose the apartment? Are you sick?" "I am not sick," I said, "and we are okay. But the wedding money, it wasn't a glitch." I opened the folder. I laid out the timeline. I showed him the bank logs. I showed him the email about Laurel's debt. He read it all in silence. I watched his eyes move back and forth, tracking the betrayal. When he looked up, his face was terrifying. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger of a man who yells. It was the cold, quiet rage of a man who builds things and hates to see them broken. "She stole it," he said. His voice was a low rumble. "Yes, she came to our house, drank our wine, and stole our future. Yes." He stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I am going over there," he said. "No," I said. I stood up too, blocking his path. "Hazel, move." He picked up his keys. "I am going to get our money back. I don't care if I have to tear her apartment apart." "Mark, stop." I grabbed his arm. His muscles were rock hard. He was trembling. "If you go over there, she wins," I said. He looked at me like I was insane. "She wins? She stole $7,000. How does she win if I go get it back?" "Because she will call the police." I said, "She will say you are violent. She will say you are threatening her. She has already told people I'm unstable. If you show up screaming, she will tell everyone that I sent my aggressive fiancé to intimidate her. She will turn herself into the victim. Mark, she is waiting for us to explode." Mark stared at me. He dropped the keys on the table with a clatter. "So what do we do? We just let her keep it? We let her buy purses with our honeymoon?" "No," I said, "we don't let her keep anything, but we do it my way." I explained the plan. I told him about the trap. I told him about the police report and the foundation job. "I am not trying to get the money back. Mark," I said, I am, but that is secondary. I am trying to make sure she can never do this to anyone else. I am taking her credibility." Mark sat back down. He put his head in his hands. He ran his fingers through his hair, leaving trails of sawdust in the dark strands. "It is sick. Hazel," he whispered. "She is your sister. I know." I said. I sat down next to him and rested my head on his shoulder. "I know." He wrapped his arm around me. He held me tight, like he was afraid I would dissolve. "I will wait," he said into my hair. "But Hazel, I am never speaking to her again. Once this is over, she is dead to me." I closed my eyes. "She is dead to me too." I thought, I'm just waiting for the funeral. We had to move the wedding. The original venue, the Whispering Pines, needed the final payment by Friday. We didn't have it. I wasn't going to beg my parents, and I wasn't going to let Mark drain his truck fund. I made a decision. I called the Harbor Inn in Maple Harbor. It was a fictional little town about an hour north, a place where the ocean met the gray sky in a blurry line. It was cheaper, it was smaller, and most importantly, they had a cancellation for our date and required a much smaller, fully refundable deposit. It wasn't the cedar-scented lodge I had dreamed of. It was a weathered building with creaky floors and a view of the docks. But it felt right. It felt honest. I signed the contract. Then, I posted an update on the wedding website. Change of plans. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Mark and I are moving our celebration to the beautiful Harbor Inn in Maple Harbor. We are looking forward to a more intimate gathering with our closest family and friends. I sent the link to the family group chat. The reaction was immediate. My mother called. I let it go to voicemail. My cousin Sarah texted, "Maple Harbor is so cute. I love the coast." And then, Laurel. She didn't text the group. She texted me privately. "Maple Harbor? That is quite a drive. Is everything okay? Did you get the deposit back from the other place?" I stared at the screen. She didn't care about the drive. She cared about the money. If I got the deposit back from Whispering Pines, that meant I had cash. If I had cash, I was a target again. Or conversely, if I had money, her narrative about me being broke and irresponsible might crack. I typed back carefully. We are making it work. It is much more affordable. Just trying to be responsible like you said. She replied with a heart emoji. Proud of you. Let me know if you need help with the new deposit. I can always hold funds for you if you are worried about keeping them in your account. The audacity was breathtaking. She was offering to steal from me again. Framed as a favor. I didn't reply. I just watched the 3 dots of her typing bubble appear and disappear. Like a heartbeat. It was time to close the net. I sent a message to the family group chat. A broadcast. I know everyone is worried about the changes and the rumors regarding our finances. I want to be clear. Mark and I are handling a difficult situation involving a theft. We are working with the authorities and will share the full facts soon. We love you all and ask for patience while the legal process concludes. My phone blew up. My mother. Hazel, what are you doing? Why are you saying theft to the whole family? My aunt. Oh my goodness. Honey, who stole from you? Laurel stayed silent in the group chat. But 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. Hello? Hazel? Laurel's voice was tight, high-pitched. What was that text? I am just updating everyone. I said. I sounded tired, defeated. You said, theft. Laurel hissed. You said, authorities. You promised me you weren't going to involve the police. You said you were handling it. I am. I said, but the bank? They are pushing it. Laurel, what do you mean? I took a deep breath. This was the lie that would catch the liar. I got an email from the fraud department this morning. I said, they said they have completed the preliminary review. They said the transfer patterns, the way the money was moved, the test transactions, the timestamps, it all points to malicious intent. They are classifying it as external felony fraud. Silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. What does that mean? She whispered. It means they are refunding the money. I said, I waited. Really? She asked. The relief in her voice was explosive. It cracked through the speaker. They are giving it back? Yes, I said. They said because it is clearly a crime. They are going to credit my account next week. Oh my God. Hazel. That is amazing. See? I told you it was a glitch. I told you it would work out. But there is a catch. I said. The silence returned. Instantly tense. What catch? Since they are refunding it as fraud, they are legally required to turn the file over to the FBI. I said, for wire fraud. They said because it crossed state lines, something about the bank servers being in Delaware, it is a federal crime. They are going to subpoena every device that accessed the account. I heard a sharp intake of breath. The FBI? Laurel laughed. A nervous, jagged sound. Hazel, that is ridiculous. For $7,000? They don't care about that. That is what I said. I feigned panic, but the fraud specialist was very serious. He said they have a zero-tolerance policy now. He said they are going to trace the IP address and arrest whoever owns the device. Laurel was quiet for a long time. Hazel, she said finally, you can't let them do that. I can't stop them. Laurel, I said, I want the money back. If I take the refund, the investigation happens automatically. No, listen to me. Laurel's voice dropped. She sounded frantic. You don't want the FBI involved. Think about the stress. Think about the family. If it turns out to be, what if it was just a mistake? What if someone you know did it by accident? You would be sending them to prison. I don't know anyone who would steal my wedding money by accident. I said, Hazel, please, you have to stop the investigation. I don't know how, I cried. Unless what? The man said the only way to stop the federal referral is if I sign a statement saying I authorize the transfer. If I say it was a loan, they close the case, but then I don't get the money back. I lose the $7,500 forever. Laurel didn't hesitate, not for a second. She didn't offer to pay me back. She didn't confess. She went straight for self-preservation. "You have to sign it," she said. "Laurel, that is my wedding money." "Hazel, listen to me." She was yelling now. "If you sign the statement, the police go away, the FBI goes away, and I will help you. I will help you pay for the wedding. I will get a loan. I promise. But you have to stop the investigation." Today, she was terrified. She believed me. "Okay," I said, my voice trembling. "Okay, but I don't know what to write. I don't want to get in trouble for lying to the bank." "I will write it," Laurel said, "just like we talked about. I will write a statement saying you asked me to manage the funds. I will email it to you. You just print it, sign it, and send it to the bank." "Okay," I said, "send it to me." I hung up. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from adrenaline. She was going to do it. She was going to document her own crime. 10 minutes later, the email arrived. Subject: Statement for bank attachment. Authorization_letter. Docs Yex. I opened the document. To whom it may concern, I, Hazel Ross, hereby confirm that I authorize the transfer of $7,500 from my checking account ending in 8892 on November 2nd. I requested that my sister, Laurel Ross, take possession of these funds temporarily to assist me with financial management and wedding planning. This was not a fraudulent transaction. I granted Laurel Ross access to my device and credentials for this purpose. Signed, Hazel Ross. I stared at the screen. It was perfect. By asking me to sign this, she was admitting that she had the money. She was admitting that the transaction was linked to her. But more importantly, she was trying to coerce me into falsifying a bank document to cover up a felony. This letter wasn't a shield for her. It was a confession of guilt and an attempt at obstruction of justice, all wrapped up in a Word document. I didn't sign it. I saved it. I printed it. I added it to the folder with the police report, the email about the credit card debt, and the bank logs. I had the motive. I had the method. And now, I had the cover-up. I looked at my phone. Laurel texted, "Did you get it? Sign it and send it right away. It is the only way to fix this." I typed back, "Got it. Handling it now." I wasn't sending it to the bank. I was taking it to the mediation. It was time to get everyone in the same room. I picked up the phone and called the local dispute resolution center. I would like to schedule a mediation. I said, with my sister. The document Laurel sent me was a masterpiece of manipulation. It was titled, Authorization and Fund Management Agreement, typed in a crisp, sans serif font that mimicked a bank form. I sat at my kitchen table, holding the printed copy. The paper felt heavy, like it was carrying the weight of our entire shared history. I, Hazel Ross, acknowledge that I voluntarily transferred funds to Laurel Ross for the purpose of budgetary oversight. It was a lie, but it was a lie that Laurel needed to become truth, or she was going to prison. I didn't sign it. Instead, I put it in a crisp manila folder and drove to the community center. David, the paralegal at the legal aid clinic, looked at the document for a long time. He tapped his pen against the desk. A rhythmic, hollow sound. "She wrote this herself?" David asked. "Yes," I said. "She said the bank needed it to clear up the confusion." David let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Hazel, this is not a bank form. This is a confession disguised as a waiver. By asking you to sign this now, dated retroactively, she is admitting two things. First, that she does not have any existing proof of authorization, and second, that she is aware the transaction looks fraudulent. This is an attempt to manufacture consent after the fact. Can I use it?" I asked. David nodded slowly. "If you sign it, you lose everything. You are admitting you gave her the money. But if you don't sign it, and you hand this to an investigator, it is evidence of consciousness of guilt. Innocent people do not ask you to backdate permission slips." I felt a cold resolve settle in my chest. "Can I record a mediation session?" I asked. "In this state?" David frowned. "Only if all parties consent, but if you go to a formal mediation center, the mediator takes notes. Those notes are not always admissible in court. But the behavior in the room? That matters. If she admits to the theft in front of a neutral third party, even if it is privileged, it destroys her credibility if she tries to change her story later. I thanked him. I walked out into the gray afternoon. I wasn't going to just hand the document to the police. Not yet. I needed her to double down. I needed her to look a professional in the eye and lie. And then I needed to break her. I called Mr. Henderson at the bank fraud department from my car. Mr. Henderson, I said, I have received a communication from the person who accessed my account. They are pressuring me to sign a statement claiming I authorized the transfer. Mr. Henderson's voice became very sharp. Do not sign anything. Ms. Ross, is this person offering to return the funds in exchange for the signature? Implicitly, I said, they are saying if I sign it. The investigation stops. That is witness tampering. Mr. Henderson said, can you send me a copy of the document? I scanned it with my phone and hit send. Received. He said, this is excellent. Ms. Ross, this proves they are aware of the investigation and are attempting to obstruct it. We will add this to the federal file. I hung up. Then, I texted Laurel. I am confused by the legal language in the document. I don't want to sign something I don't understand. Can we meet with a mediator? Just to talk it through? There is a center downtown. I just want to settle this before the wedding so we can be a family again. I waited. The 3 dots appeared. A mediator? Hazel. That is so dramatic. We can just talk at my apartment. I typed back. I need a neutral space. Mark is really angry. If we do this with a mediator, I can tell Mark we did it properly. Please, if we do this, I will sign. It was the carrot she couldn't resist. Fine, she replied. Book it. But let's get it over with. The Briar Glen Dispute Resolution Center was a beige building that smelled of dust and tension. I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore a simple gray sweater and jeans. I wore no makeup. I wanted to look tired. I wanted to look like the beaten-down sister she expected. Laurel arrived right on time. She was wearing a white blazer and pearls. She looked like she was running for office. She carried a leather portfolio, not the stolen handbag. I noted. She was smart enough to leave the evidence at home. The mediator was a woman named Carol. She had kind eyes and the patience of a kindergarten teacher. We sat at a round table. The goal of this session is to facilitate communication. Carol said softly, we are not here to judge. We are here to find a path forward. Laurel folded her hands on the table. She looked at Carol with a tragic, brave smile. I just want to help my sister, Laurel said. Her voice was steady, warm. Hazel has been going through a really difficult time. The wedding stress. It has triggered some old issues. Carol nodded. What kind of issues? Laurel glanced at me. A look of perfect, practiced pity. Financial instability, Laurel said. Impulsivity. Hazel asked me to safeguard her wedding fund because she was afraid she would spend it on unrelated things. I agreed to hold it for her. But now? She is confused about the arrangement, and she is lashing out. I sat very still. I kept my hands in my lap. Hazel, Carol asked, how do you respond to that? I didn't defend myself. I didn't say I am not impulsive. That was what Laurel wanted. She wanted a fight. I looked at Laurel. Laurel, I said softly, when specifically did I ask you to take the money? Laurel blinked. She hadn't expected a question. She expected an accusation. Well, she said, it was over a few weeks. We talked about it in October. What date? I asked. I don't have a calendar in front of me. Hazel? Laurel laughed nervously. It was a general conversation. You were crying about the budget. You said, Laurel, please take this so I don't touch it. I nodded. And when you transferred the money, I asked, did you do it from your phone or mine? Laurel stiffened. We did it together, but the bank logs show the transfer was initiated from your device. I said, while I was at work. Laurel turned to the mediator. See? This is what she does. She gets obsessed with these tiny details because she is trying to distract from the truth. She gave me the password. She wrote it down for me. I kept my voice flat, monotone. I wrote it down? I asked. When? Years ago, Laurel snapped. When we lived together. So I gave you the password years ago for a transfer that happened last week? Laurel's face flushed pink. You renewed the permission, she said. Hazel, why are you doing this? I am trying to help you. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the draft statement she had emailed me. If you are trying to help me. Laurel. I said, why do you need me to sign this? I slid the paper across the table to Carol. Carol put on her reading glasses. She read the text. Her eyebrows went up. This states that Hazel is retroactively authorizing a transfer. Carol said, Laurel, did you write this? Laurel looked at the paper like it was a bomb. I was just trying to formalize our agreement. She said, the bank was giving Hazel a hard time because of the automated fraud filters. I wanted to give her a document that would help her clear it up. But Laurel, I said, you told me the bank investigation would send people to prison. You said I had to sign this to stop the FBI? Laurel's eyes went wide. I never said that, she shouted. You called me. You said, sign this or the police will come. You are a liar. Laurel slammed her hand on the table. The white blazer didn't look so professional anymore. Her face was twisted. You are a jealous, ungrateful little bitch. I saved you. I took that money to stop you from throwing it away on that pathetic wedding in a barn. And this is how you thank me? The room went silent. The mediator, Carol, looked at Laurel. She saw the rage. She saw the entitlement. She saw the mask slip. Laurel, Carol said, her voice cool. Please lower your voice. Laurel stood up. She was breathing hard. She realized. Too late. What she had done. She had shown her teeth. I am done. Laurel spat. She grabbed her portfolio. I am not going to sit here and be interrogated by someone who can't even pay her own rent without Daddy's help. She stormed out. I stayed seated. Carol looked at me. There was no pity in her eyes anymore. There was respect. Do you want a moment? Hazel? She asked. No. Thank you. I said, I think we are done here. I had what I needed. Laurel had lost control. She had contradicted herself, and a neutral witness had seen the violence under the surface. Laurel was waiting for me in the parking lot. She was leaning against my car, her arms crossed. The November wind whipped her blonde hair around her face. She didn't look like a politician anymore. She looked like a predator. I walked toward her, keys in hand. I wasn't afraid. That was the strange thing. I used to be terrified of her anger. I used to shrink when she raised her voice. But now, looking at her, I realized she was small. She was just a person who owed money. You think you are so smart, Laurel said. Her voice was low, devoid of the theatricality she used in public. You think because you tricked me in there, you win? I didn't trick you. Laurel, I just asked you questions. You are pathetic, she said. You know what is going to happen? I am going to tell everyone. Tell everyone what? That you are unwell, she said. I will tell Mom and Dad that you are having a breakdown. I will tell Mark's parents that you are hiding debt. I will tell every person in this town that you are a liability. Go ahead, I said, and who will they believe? Laurel stepped closer. She invaded my personal space, smelling of expensive musk. They will believe me, because I am the successful one. I am the one with the career. I am the one who is useful to this family. You are just the waitress with a dental hygiene certificate. You are nobody. I looked her in the eye. Are you done? I asked. Mark should run. She sneered. He is going to wake up one day and realize he married an anchor. I will make sure he knows. I unlocked my car. Get off my car. Laurel. She sneered, but she stepped back. Sign the paper. Hazel, she said, or I will burn your life to the ground. I got in the car. I locked the doors. I drove away without looking back. I felt the old fear fluttering in my stomach, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being the outcast. But then I looked at the passenger seat where my folder lay. She claimed she was the successful one. She claimed she was the one with the career. I reached for my phone. It was time to end that illusion. I sat in my apartment. Barnaby was purring on my lap. The apartment was quiet. I opened the email from Joyce at the Community Foundation. Dear Hazel, checking in to see if you have time for a brief call regarding Laurel's reference. I didn't call, I wrote. Writing was permanent. Writing was evidence. I took a deep breath. I typed, Dear Joyce, thank you for your patience. I prefer to provide this reference in writing to ensure accuracy. I cannot recommend Laurel Ross for a position involving financial oversight or donor relations. I am currently the victim of a financial crime involving the unauthorized access and removal of funds from my personal bank accounts. The investigation has identified Laurel Ross as the individual who accessed the accounts and transferred the funds without my consent. There is an active police report on file regarding this matter. Given the nature of the role at the Community Foundation, I felt a duty to disclose this ongoing investigation. Sincerely, Hazel Ross. I read it over. It wasn't a rant. I didn't say she was a bad sister. I didn't say she was a narcissist. I stated facts. Unauthorized access, removal of funds, active police report. I hovered over the send button. This was it. This was the nuclear option. If I sent this, she lost the job. She lost the reputation she valued more than her own blood. I thought about the wedding fund. I thought about the lies she told about my gambling. I thought about Mark's face when he realized his savings were gone. I thought about her standing in the parking lot, telling me I was nobody. I clicked send. The reaction took 3 hours. I was making dinner, chopping vegetables with a mechanical rhythm, when my phone rang. It was Laurel. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then the text started. You bitch. What did you do? They rescinded the offer. You ruined my life. Pick up the phone. I put the phone on silent. I continued chopping carrots. She had built her entire self-worth on the idea that she was the golden child, the professional, the one who was going places. She needed that job not just for the money, but for the mask. I had just ripped the mask off. Half an hour later, the tone of the texts changed. The rage burned out, replaced by the desperate bargaining of a cornered animal. Hazel, please, I am sorry, I yelled. I can fix this. I can get a loan. I will pay you back $4,000 next week. I just need you to call them back. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them we resolved it. Please, this is my future. If you sign the statement, I will pay you back everything. I swear. She still didn't get it. She thought it was a transaction. She thought she could buy her reputation back with money she didn't have. I didn't reply. I wasn't negotiating. I was witnessing. The next morning, the final piece fell into place. I was at the dental office, filing charts. When my email pinged, it was Officer Miller, Ms. Ross. I wanted to update you, based on the documentation you provided, specifically the email regarding the debt repayment and the bank logs showing the device history. We have sufficient probable cause. We have subpoenaed the bank records, and the initial return confirms the funds were transferred to an account in your sister's name and immediately used to pay a credit card provider. We have contacted Ms. Ross to request an interview. Given the amount exceeds the statutory threshold, we are investigating this as felony theft. She has been asked to come to the station tomorrow morning. I stared at the screen. The fluorescent lights of the office hummed overhead. It was happening. It wasn't a family dispute anymore. It wasn't a confusion. It was a crime number. Case file 89204. I walked out to my car. I needed air. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel a surge of victory, like the hero in a movie who finally lands the knockout punch. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt shaking. My hands trembled so hard, the keys rattled in the ignition. I was relieved. God, I was relieved. The gaslighting was over. The truth was written down on police letterhead. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was right. But beneath the relief, there was a terrible, aching grief. I was grieving the sister I wanted her to be. I was grieving the person who I thought would be my maid of honor. I was grieving the aunt my future children would never know. I had won. I had stripped her of her lies. I had taken her weapon away. But looking at the empty passenger seat, I realized that in order to save myself, I had to orphan myself. I put my head on the steering wheel and let out a long, shuddering breath. Tomorrow. She would walk into an interrogation room. Tomorrow. The reality she had run from for 30 years would finally catch her. But today, I was just a girl sitting in a parking lot, realizing that the price of freedom was loneliness. I did not have to wait long for the explosion. It arrived at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. Wearing a trench coat and carrying a storm cloud of manufactured hysteria, I was at the front desk of the dental office, helping Mrs. Gable schedule her root canal. When the door flew open, it wasn't a normal entrance. It was an entrance designed to stop traffic. Laurel stood there. Her face was blotchy. Her hair was uncharacteristically messy, a calculated disarray. I suspected, and she was already sobbing before she took a step inside. "Hazel!" she screamed. The sound bounced off the sterile white walls and the linoleum floors. "Hazel, how could you?" The entire waiting room froze. "Mrs." Gable dropped her appointment card. The hygienist poked her head out from the back. I felt the blood drain from my face, not from fear, but from a sudden, exhausted clarity. She was doing exactly what she had done in the mediation parking lot. But she was scaling it up. She wanted a scene. She wanted me to yell back. She wanted to show the world that we were just two screaming sisters. Equally crazy, equally culpable. If I shouted, she won. If I cried, she won. I stood up slowly. I kept my hands on the desk. "Laurel," I said. My voice was low, even. "This is a place of business. You need to lower your voice." She ignored me. She marched to the desk, slamming her hands down on the counter. "You ruined my life," she wailed, turning slightly so the audience in the waiting chairs could get a better profile view. "You called them. You called the foundation and told them lies. They pulled the offer. Hazel, they took it away because of you." I looked at the receptionist, Brenda, whose eyes were wide as saucers. "Brenda," I said quietly, "can you please ask Dr. Evans if I can use the consultation room for 5 minutes?" Brenda nodded frantically and ran to the back. "I am not going to a back room with you," Laurel shouted. "I want everyone to know what you did. You are jealous. You have always been jealous." I walked around the desk. I didn't touch her. I didn't engage with her accusations. I just opened the door to the consultation room and stood there, holding it. "I am not having this conversation in the lobby." "Laurel," I said, "if you want to talk, come in here. If you want to scream, I will call security and have you removed for trespassing. Choose." Laurel stared at me. She looked at the security camera in the corner. She looked at the patients clutching their magazines. She realized the audience wasn't sympathetic. They were just annoyed and uncomfortable. She stomped past me into the room. I followed her in and closed the door. The silence was sudden and heavy. Laurel spun around. The tears stopped instantly, replaced by a cold, vibrating rage. "You sent that email," she hissed. "Joyce told me. She said you flagged a criminal investigation. How dare you?" I sat down in the dentist's chair. Crossing my legs, I told the truth. "Laurel, I said I couldn't recommend you for a fiduciary role because you are under investigation for theft. That is a fact. It is not theft." Laurel paced the small room, knocking into a tray of instruments. "It was a loan. I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" I asked. "Yes." Laurel threw her hands up. "I saw how you were spending. I saw you looking at expensive venues, spending money on stupid things. I took that money to put it aside so you wouldn't wake up broke after the wedding. I was going to give it back." I watched her rewrite history. It was fascinating, in a sickening way. She actually believed it, in her mind. Paying her credit card bill and stopping her eviction was an act of altruism for my benefit. I waited for her to stop panting. Then I asked the question I had been holding on to for weeks. "If you were protecting me." "Laurel," I said, my voice steady and quiet, "if you planned to give it back, why did you call me unstable before you ever offered repayment?" Laurel froze. "What?" "The moment you took the money, I said, before I even knew it was gone. You told Mom I was having a breakdown. You told Sarah I was gambling. You told your friends I was spiraling. If you were just holding the money for safekeeping, why did you have to destroy my reputation? She opened her mouth, then closed it. You didn't take the money to help me. I said, you took it to save yourself, and you torched my credibility so that when I found out, no one would believe me. You weren't protecting me. You were burying me. Laurel's face crumbled, not into sadness, but into hate. You are a cold bitch. Hazel, she whispered, you think you are so perfect with your little savings account and your little fiancé. You don't know what it is like to struggle. I stood up. I work 2 jobs. Laurel, I scrub espresso machines until my hands bleed. You buy $2,000 handbags to impress people you don't even like. We both struggle. But I pay my own bills. I open the door. Get out, I said, and don't come back here. Laurel glared at me. She adjusted her coat, wiping her face with the back of her hand. This isn't over, she said. Mom will never forgive you for this. I know, I said, and that was the hardest part. I knew she was right. The police interview happened 3 days later. I wasn't there, obviously, but Officer Miller filled me in afterwards, his voice heavy with a mix of professional satisfaction and weariness. She walked in thinking she could charm her way out of it. He told me she was dressed up, she was polite. She tried to bond with the detective, making jokes about how sisters always fight over clothes and money. She stuck to her story. She claimed I had given her the password in 2018 and reaffirmed it verbally in October. She claimed the transfer was a mutual decision to safeguard assets. Then, they laid out the timeline. They showed her the login logs from the budgeting app, proving she had been tracking the account growth for weeks. They showed her the email recovery settings with her old phone number, proving access wasn't authorized, but backdoored. And then, the kicker. They put the document on the table. The authorization and fund management agreement she had drafted and emailed to me. Officer Miller told me she went pale. You see, Ms. Ross, he said to me, innocent people who have verbal permission don't usually draft fake legal documents asking for retroactive authorization 3 weeks after the fact. And they certainly don't date them for the past. That document proved she knew she didn't have permission. It proved she was trying to construct a defense after the crime had been committed. When they pointed out the metadata on the file, showing it was created the morning I told her about the FBI, she stopped talking. She asked for a lawyer. The charm evaporated. The Concerned Sister Act dissolved. What was left was just a suspect in a room, realizing the walls were made of concrete. Not narrative. Winning didn't look like a movie. There was no gavel banging. There was no judge sentencing her to 10 years in a dramatic monologue. Winning looked like paperwork. It looked like a settlement agreement drafted by the district attorney's office, because it was a first offense, and because the courts were clogged. They offered her a deal. If she agreed to full restitution and a probationary period, they would defer the felony charge. If she paid every cent back within 12 months, the charge would be expunged. If she missed a single payment, she went to jail. The bank dispute resolved in tandem, with the police report and the admission of guilt implied by the plea deal. The bank agreed to release a portion of the funds they had managed to freeze in her account, about $2,000 she hadn't managed to spend yet. The rest, the $5,500 she had poured into her debts, was gone. I wouldn't see that check for months, maybe years. As she paid it back in small, court-mandated installments, I signed the agreement at my kitchen table. Mark sat next to me, drinking coffee. Is it enough? He asked. I looked at the signature line. Laurel Ann Ross. She isn't in prison, I said, but she is in the system. She has a record now. She can't work in finance. She can't work with donor funds. She is on a leash. Mark nodded. It is justice, he said. It is just quiet. Quiet is good. I said, I am tired of loud. The noise in Laurel's life, however, was deafening. The withdrawal of the job offer from the community foundation wasn't a private matter. Briar Glen was a small city, and the nonprofit world was a tiny village. People talked. Joyce didn't tell people the specifics, but she didn't have to. The rumor mill churned. Laurel Ross lost the offer. Something about a background check. Something about financial fraud. The veneer Laurel had spent years polishing began to crack. Without the new job, she couldn't maintain the apartment. The eviction she had stalled with my money came back around, this time with finality. She had to move out. I heard through Sarah that she was couch surfing, staying with Jenna for a week before Jenna politely asked her to leave. Apparently, the generous Laurel who bought rounds of drinks was fun, but the broke Laurel who needed a place to stay and borrowed clothes without asking was less appealing. Her friends, the ones who liked her Instagram posts and drank her martinis, vanished. They were accessories to a lifestyle she could no longer afford. When the money stopped, the audience left. She was alone, and she blamed me. Every lost friend, every rejected application, every cold night on a sofa, in her mind. It was all Hazel's fault. I was the architect of her misery. She couldn't see that I had simply turned on the lights. The final break with my family happened on a Sunday. My mother came to my apartment. She didn't knock with her usual authority. She knocked softly, like she was afraid of what might be on the other side. I let her in. We stood in the kitchen. The air was thick with things unsaid. "She is living in her car. Hazel," my mother said. Her voice was trembling. "Your sister is sleeping in her Honda." I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and instinctive, but I stayed still. "She has a job." "Mom," I said, "she still works for the event planner. She can afford a room somewhere. She is humiliated." My mother said, "She can't show her face. You have destroyed her reputation in this town." "I didn't destroy it." "Mom, she did. She stole from me. She lied about me." My mother slammed her hand on the counter. "Is $7,000 worth this?" she shouted. "Is it worth your sister's life? Is it worth tearing this family apart? You could have just let it go. You could have signed the paper. We could have fixed it internally. But you had to be right. You had to win." I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had raised me. And I saw the pattern that had defined my entire life. Whenever Laurel broke something, I was expected to sweep up the glass. If I cut my hands doing it, I was told to stop bleeding because it was upsetting Laurel. I am not trying to win. "Mom," I said softly, "I am trying to exist. You are being cruel." She spat. "No," I said, "I am finally protecting myself. Because you never did." My mother froze. "You always chose her." I said, "I don't think you meant to, but you did. You chose her feelings over my reality. You chose her comfort over my safety. And even now, when she committed a felony against me, you are standing in my kitchen asking me to apologize to her. I am asking you to be a sister," my mother cried. "I was a sister." I said, "I was the best sister I knew how to be. I gave her money. I gave her computers. I gave her chances. And she ate them all and asked for more. I walked to the door and opened it. I love you." "Mom," I said, "but I'm not paying the price for Laurel's choices anymore. If you want to fix her, you can. But you do it with your money and your time, not mine." My mother stared at me. She looked like she wanted to slap me or hug me or collapse. "You are hard." "Hazel," she whispered, "I had to become hard." I said, "To survive you people." She left. She didn't look back. I locked the door. I slid down against the wood and sat on the floor. I cried then. I cried for the mother I wanted, and the sister I remembered from childhood, before the envy ate her alive. I cried until my chest ached, but when I stood up, the house was quiet, and my bank account was safe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. The wedding was in December. We drove to Maple Harbor in Mark's truck. The heater blasting against the coastal chill. The sky was the color of bruised iron, and the ocean was churning, white foam crashing against the black rocks. It wasn't the Whispering Pines. It wasn't a ballroom. The Harbor Inn was small, smelling of salt and wood smoke. We had 20 guests. My father came, looking pale and quiet. standing in the back like a ghost. My mother didn't come. She said she couldn't celebrate while Laurel was suffering. Laurel, obviously, was not there. I wore a simple white dress I bought off the rack. I held a bouquet of winter greens and white roses. When I walked down the aisle, a narrow path between creaky wooden pews, I didn't feel the rush of adrenaline I had expected. I didn't feel the fairy tale. I felt clarity. I looked at Mark. He was standing there in his suit, his eyes solid and kind. He knew everything. He knew about the theft, the police, the screaming in the dental office. He knew my family was broken. He knew I came with jagged edges, and he was still standing there. We said our vows over the sound of the wind rattling the window panes, for richer, for poorer. Those words hit differently now. I knew what poorer meant. It meant theft. It meant betrayal. It meant starting from zero. In sickness and in health, I knew that sickness wasn't just a fever. It was a sickness of the soul, the kind that made a sister steal a wedding fund to buy a handbag. When Mark kissed me, I felt a profound, settling peace. The drama was over. The performance was over. We ate clam chowder and drank champagne out of mismatched glasses. We danced to a playlist on Mark's phone. It was imperfect. It was small. It was ours. I thought it was over. But stories like this don't end with a period. They end with an ellipsis. 2 months after the wedding, I was back at work. Life had settled into a rhythm. The repayment checks from the court had started arriving. Small, pathetic amounts of $50 here, $100 there. Laurel was paying. Slowly. Then, I got a call from an old college friend. Jessica. Hazel. She said, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I saw Laurel yesterday. I stiffened. Where? She is working at a boutique in the mall. Jessica said, but she was telling people why she left the event planning world. Oh? She is telling people that you sabotaged her, Jessica said. She is telling people that you stole her job offer. Stole her job? I laughed. How? She says you called the foundation and lied about her because you were jealous that she was going to be making more money than you. She says you impersonated a police officer to get her flagged. She says you are a sociopath who is obsessed with ruining her. I felt a cold weariness settle in my bones. She wasn't stopping. She couldn't stop. The lie was the only thing holding her together. If she admitted she was a thief, she crumbled. So she had to build a new fortress where she was the victim and I was the villain. I could have gone on Facebook and posted the court documents. I could have posted the mugshot. I could have destroyed her new narrative in 10 seconds. But I looked at Mark, sitting on the sofa, reading a book. I looked at Barnaby sleeping in the sun. I didn't want to fight in the mud anymore. I called David at the legal aid clinic. David, I said, one last favor. Can we send a cease and desist? Just a letter? David asked. Just a letter. I said, certified mail, telling her that if she continues to make defamatory statements regarding the criminal case, I will file a civil suit for slander and release the full police file to the public. I will draft it today. David said, I sent the letter. I didn't hear back. The rumors stopped, or at least, they went underground where I couldn't hear them. That was enough. The climax didn't come with a bang. It came with a buzz. It was a Tuesday night. Mark was asleep. I was awake, reading in bed. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. New message from unknown number. I picked it up. It was an image. I tapped to open it. It was a photo of a page from our old family scrapbook, the one my mother kept on the coffee table. It was a picture of us from a beach trip when we were kids. I was 10. Laurel was 8. We were building a sandcastle, but my face was gone. Someone had taken a pen, a heavy black marker, and scratched my face out, violently. The paper was torn where the ink had soaked through. My head was just a black, jagged void. Below the photo was a text. 3 words. You took my life. I stared at the screen. The blue light illuminated the dark bedroom. You took my life. She truly believed it. She didn't see the theft. She didn't see the lies. She didn't see the betrayal. She only saw that I had taken her job, her apartment, her friends, and her family's good opinion. She saw me as the thief, I was the monster in her story. I felt a chill run through me. Colder than the ocean at Maple Harbor, I realized then that I would never be safe from her hatred, because her hatred was the fuel she ran on. I didn't reply. I didn't block the number. I saved the image. I screenshotted the text. I emailed it to Officer Miller to add to the file. Then, I turned off my phone. I looked at Mark, sleeping peacefully beside me. I looked at the wedding ring on my hand. Simple and gold. I had my life. She could scratch my face out of every photo in the world, but she couldn't scratch me out of reality. I lay down in the dark, listening to the wind outside. I was an orphan with living parents. I was a bride with a stolen dowry, but I was free. And for the first time in 33 years, the door to my life was locked, and I was the only one with the key. Thank you so much for reading Hazel's story. It's a heavy one. I know. Family betrayal leaves scars that don't always heal neatly, and I wanted to write an ending that felt true to that reality, where winning doesn't mean everything goes back to normal, but simply means surviving with your truth intact. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening or reading from today? And more importantly, have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to protect yourself? How did you handle the fallout? If you enjoyed this story and want more realistic, emotional dramas about justice and revenge, please subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. Your support helps me keep writing these characters and these moments. Share your thoughts below. I read every single one. Stay safe, and remember to check your bank accounts.